The war to create the best desktop operating system has been ongoing since the 80s, with competitors like IBM's PS2, Sun Microsystems' Solaris, Linus Torvalds' Linux, Microsoft's Windows, and Apple's Mac OS. However, for desktop enthusiasts, programmers, and gamers in 2019, your choices boil down to two operating systems, Linux or Windows. Because the modern desktop operating system facilitates so much of the computing experience these days, there are a few categories we need to cover. Price, performance, hardware support, software support, and customization. Let's get into it. The first thing we need to get out of the way from the very start is price. Linux is free. In fact, you can go to sites like ubuntu.com, archlinux.org, or manjaro.org and download several Linux distros right now for free. Which leads us to another point. Linux has more customizability than Windows, or any other OS for that matter. Just the fact that there are separate flavors, or distros, is a strong point for Linux. Linux has modular and completely replaceable desktop environments, display compositors, kernels, and other core components such as terminal and file manager. It's for this reason that security researchers and programmers overwhelmingly prefer using Linux. However, simplicity is often sacrificed compared to Windows in the effort to make every single piece of the OS changeable. Windows is the most popular desktop operating system. In fact, at the time of recording, it's estimated that Microsoft holds over 80% of the desktop OS market share. That on its own basically guarantees the best hardware support possible. Think about it. If you're a hardware manufacturer, say Logitech, you need to 100% make sure your hardware works with Windows. If it doesn't work with Windows, it may as well not work at all. That, combined with a very robust Windows update and automatic driver fetching over the internet, and around 40 years of legacy support that is still maintained to this day, and you better bet Windows is going to have the best hardware support. Perhaps the most important factor in the entire experience is performance. In theory, Linux should have better performance than Windows. After all, it has more intelligent use of physical memory as cache, as well as less CPU overhead. However, the reality is that Linux's lack of exclusive full-screen support, hardware VSync, and generally underdeveloped desktop composition leads it to having worse real-world performance. Not to mention, software developers almost always optimize for Windows, as it's the most popular platform. What you're looking at right now is a high frame rate, slow motion capture of the menu transition in Portal 2 running on Windows. I'm using Portal 2 because it is an OpenGL game which was built with native Linux compatibility in mind as to give Linux the best case scenario. My camera is running at 120 FPS, which matches the 120Hz refresh rate of my monitor and the 120 FPS frame rate of the game. As you'll notice, the transition is perfectly smooth with no hitching or stuttering. Now what you're looking at is the exact same transition on the exact same computer, but running Linux. Notice those stutters? This is catastrophic for Linux, practically eliminating it for anyone that requires a high refresh computing experience, especially gamers. While both platforms have their merits, it seems clear that at the time of recording, Windows is a much better all-around experience. Windows has advantages that cannot be replicated on Linux, while most of Linux's advantages, like customization and price, can be mitigated or completely nullified if you're willing to do some registry tweaks for customization or upgrade from a previous version of Windows for free through Microsoft. After all, almost everyone has had a Windows computer at least once in their life.